Guess we're gonna start this.
I may or may not have joined this quest to slay an tempered devil Joe.
You're a jerk.
You jerk.
We've already
How
fucked it up.
good.
Shut up and sit down.
All right, welcome to another rip-roaring episode of G-Cast Cast. We're gonna talk almost exclusively today, I think, about the next generation, not Star Trek. I don't think any of us watch Star Trek. Sorry, Trekkies. We're all
Let's
Star
not
Wars
alienate
fans.
ourselves that much.
I'm just gonna
You
beep
know,
that
God.
whole thing out
There you
so I
go.
don't make anyone mad. Yeah, no, we're gonna dedicate today to talking about next gen. We got some news recently. We talked a little bit about some stuff before. We talked about like Halo and their showing, but we never posted that. We got some news to follow that, and it was just like, all right, now there's more stuff to talk about. It was mostly just Greg ranting about Halo and stuff, and us
Yeah,
just kind of
we
being
all
like,
did
yeah,
a lot
bro,
of
you're
Halo.
right.
Yeah, so the game didn't look great. I'm very worried, I guess I would say. I kind of want to explain like why I'm worried and why other people should be worried, I guess. For me, it was just kind of like, here's what it could be in a little bit. Like, you know, like it just felt very unpolished, unfinished, also felt generic. The fact that we had to like break it down and really like tear into it that much kind of is a bad move. It's bad.
Okay. So you get the idea now.
Where should we start, Brendan?
I mean, I figure the most logical place is probably just to start with the boxes themselves. There's a chart. According to IGN, we've got the prices. Obviously, $499, $399 on the PlayStation 5, $499 on the Series X, but then $299 on the Series S. In terms of like hardware, comparing in editions, the PS5 to its digital edition, same internals. Only difference is optical drive on the physical edition, whatever you want to call it, the standard edition, Blu-ray edition, whatever. It has an optical drive. It'll take a physical disc. It is $100 more. I don't know what Blu-ray drive costs $100, but that's the one that's in there apparently. I mean, we know they have super, super thin margins on console like sales. Their actual profit margins are very slim, so they're probably trying to make a little bit of money back on the disc edition by pricing it at that point. Or it could be the opposite. It could be that they're taking more of a hit on the digital edition and they're chopping that price to get that down. Who knows?
Yeah.
Could be going the other direction. Definitely a bigger difference between the Series X and the Series S. Same thing here, no disk drive, it's a fully digital version. But then once you get into the hardware, there are definitely some differences here. On the Series X, you get 16 gigs of GDDR6. On the Series S, it's only 10. The memory bandwidth on those is a little bit slimmer too. 8 gigs at 224 gigabytes per second versus on the Series X, it's 10 gigs at 560 gigabytes per second. And then 6 gigabytes per second at 335, or 6 gigabytes at 335 gigabytes per second versus 2 gigabytes at 56 gigabytes per second. CPU is actually the same, which is shocking that they at this price point still managed to get that that same CPU in there. 8 times Zen, 2 cores at 3.8 gigahertz, 3.6 gigahertz with SMT. Graphics a little different though there. I figure that's kind of the heart of your console when you're talking about a home gaming console. So you got Series X, custom AMD Radeon RDNA Navi, 12 teraflops at 52 CUs at 1.825 gigahertz, supports DirectX ray tracing. It's funny that says that here too. It would be kind of a stretch, but custom AMD Radeon RDNA 4 teraflops, 20 CUs at 1.55 gigahertz, supports DirectX ray tracing. somehow it's ray tracing at 4 teraflops, but it says that what does that mean practically? So Series X has native 4K and 8K support, so it's 4K native. I think the 8K stuff is going to be all the same gimmicks that they use to scale up to 4K this gen, like 8K checkerboard or something, up to 120 hertz refresh. And then the Series X is 1440p with 4K support through playback or upscaling at 120 frames per second. Data transfer speed is the same. Storage. You've got on the Series X, you've got 1 terabyte NVMe SSD storage. But on the Series S, you've only got 512 gigabytes NVMe SSD storage. I'm curious about that because I want to know if the games on Series S versus Series X are going to be like there'll be a different install size. I'm assuming that's how it's going to be. They're going to be optimized for which console they're on, and it just probably won't install like it'll install with lower res textures or, more compact shaders and, lower bitrate audio, something. I don't know. I mean, audio doesn't take that much. Yeah, whatever. The point is, like, I'm wondering if it's going to be like that because, I mean, we keep comparing this stuff to PC. The thing with PC is when you install the game, you install the game. Whether you use if you put your settings on high or low, you've still installed all those assets. You're just running it at a lower setting. But you still have those higher res textures installed. You're just not using them. Whereas, with this, again, they're custom building or custom setting. I don't know how you would phrase it. Like they're setting up the game specifically for that console. And with this, it's going to be digital too. So you're going to be buying a digital edition for Series S. It's not like you're going to buy a disc. But they could even do it with a disc, I suppose. Just have the bare assets on there, and then you just get a big install on the Series X as opposed to a smaller one on the Series S. But the whole point of me saying that is this hard drive going to fill up twice as fast because it's half as big with the same games?
I think if we look at Microsoft's nomenclature, we can kind of figure it out because basically what they're saying is they're saying the games are optimized for Series X, right? So I think you're going to be seeing kind of like a baseline development and like what you're saying when it comes to the X, if you're installing on that console or whatever, it's going to have additional information basically containing all those high-res textures and that ray tracing data and all that stuff. Maybe a more robust ray tracing suite or whatever for Series X and all those things that you're talking about where you flip all your settings to max, will just like be on those Series X optimized installs.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if that is the case, then you'll be able to go a lot further with this 512 gigabytes than you would if you were still installing the full same assets and everything as what would go on your Series X. But I mean, that kind of remains to be seen. As far as other differences between Series S and Series X, audio video hookups, native 4K, 8K support, 2 HDMI 2.1 ports. This one just says HDMI 2.1 port. Okay, so all that was just comparing each edition of each respective console to itself. Now the really interesting shit starts where we actually get to compare the PS5 to the pretty much for the purposes of this, we'll just keep it to PS5 versus Series X, both the disc edition, the physical edition, keep that on the same plane. Price is the same, $499. Xbox, we got the release date, gets a jump on PlayStation by 2 days. Okay, so it's a Tuesday and a Thursday. The 19th worldwide for the PlayStation 5.
Also a Thursday.
Yeah. So it's 7 days apart. It's a week apart.
Yes.
That's a more significant jump globally for the Series X, because the Series
Yeah.
X is releasing on the 10th in all territories. That might be partly why we right before we were going to record this podcast type thing in Majig Gcast, I forgot we branded it already. Right before we were going to record this Gcast, we saw news come out that they had already reduced the price of the Series S in Japan, right? I think it was Japan.
Saw that.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's like surprising. I guess it's not selling over there. I would think this.
Well, I think if we look back, I think Microsoft might have even done stuff like this in the past. They've always had a hard time in that market.
Yeah.
But that being said, like, was it just the Series S or was it the X as well?
All I saw was the Series S.
Okay. I don't know, just between the announcement of the proprietary storage unit for the Series X, the cost of that, as well as the news of the price drop in Japan, I'm surprised they didn't just go for an overall just like little bit of price drop to kind of make it even more enticing across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I think we were talking about um that proprietary storage device probably going down in price like sooner than later.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
to be more accessible once people have the console in their hands more. I think Microsoft's going to want more people to buy their proprietary units, so I think they're definitely going to cut the price of that like sooner than later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's definitely high possibility of that. I think once we go down the chart a little ways, I think they have Seagate proprietary 1 terabyte SSD expansion card, USB 3.2, already up to 3.2, HDD support. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, people, I think in Asian territories are pretty loyal to the Sony consoles. In general, I think their interests are a little bit different from ours, as a territory or whatever, general gaming trends and stuff. There's definitely more interest in JRPGs and shit over there, of course. I mean, that's all going to lead into talking about Microsoft's recent acquisition, which is primarily going to center around Western RPGs for the most part. But we'll get to that. Anyway, 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray drive, digital edition excluded, obviously. 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray drive. Look at that. They're still using the same shit. RAM. 16 gigabytes GDDR6 RAM, 256-bit, and basically essentially the same thing over here on the Series X. Memory bandwidth, I think, is a little bit different. 448 gigabytes per second on the PS5, whereas you've got 10 gigabytes at 560 gigabytes per second on the Series X. And then you got 6 gigabytes at 335 gigabytes per second on the Series X. So, I mean, I don't know the math on it, but I think it's giving the Series X a little bit of an edge on memory. Whereas PlayStation 5 has decided to take all 16 gigs and put it at 448 gigabytes per second. The Series X has 10 gigs at 560, obviously a little faster, and then 6 gigs at 335, a little slower. For all intents and purposes, they've got 10 gigs at 10 gigs of memory running at 100 gigs faster bandwidth, and 6 gigs running at 100 gigs slower bandwidth. I don't know how that's going to equate out. Probably not going to make a huge difference in practicality and your actual day-to-day returns on it. But interesting nonetheless that they chose to go these different routes with their 16 gigs of respective GDDR6. CPUs, very similar, slightly different clock rates. PlayStation 5, 8 times Zen 2 cores at 3.5 gigahertz. Series X, 8 times Zen 2 cores at 3.8 gigahertz, 3.6 with SMT. The 3.8 versus 3.5 is more the numbers you'd be looking at. So it's clocked a little bit faster on the CPU. Not a huge difference there, but again, slight, maybe slight on the CPU and slight on the memory bandwidth. Edges for Xbox there. GPU, this is where we've had some major differences, or what might be some major differences just from looking at numbers, despite what Mark Cerny might have you think. Custom AMD RDNA Navi 10.28 teraflops, 36 CUs at 2.23 gigahertz. Supports ray tracing and 3D audio via the Tempest engine. That's on the PlayStation 5. On the Series X, custom AMD Radeon RDNA Navi at 12 teraflops, 52 CUs at 1.825 gigahertz. Supports DirectX ray tracing. So your Xbox GPU definitely has a higher teraflop count. That was after all the specs came out for both consoles, the thing that a lot of people were, like, Xbox has got the more powerful GPU. And then Mark Cerny was like, well, it's dangerous to measure the power of a console just on teraflops. Which there's some truth to, but for the most part, generally, teraflops is a pretty good baseline measure of just graphical processing power. So for our purposes, it does look like, there's a little bit of an edge there on the GPU. We'll get back to talking about that once we just travel through these last several tech points, spec points. Video output, pretty much 4K, 120 hertz refresh rate, 8K support. Native 4K, 8K support up to 120 hertz, same deal. Peak GPU shader throughput to be announced. Variable shading on the Xbox. Data transfer speeds. This is where we shift the other way, that the PlayStation has a little bit of an edge. Data transfer speeds is 5.5 gigabytes per second raw, 8 to 9 gigabytes per second compressed. Whereas the Series X is running at, both the Series X and the Series S are running at 2.4 gigabytes per second raw, or 4.8 gigabytes per second compressed. So even the compressed speeds
significant
are slower than the raw speeds on the PlayStation. That's all due to their, here we go, custom 825 gigabyte SSD storage drive. That was the thing everybody was going nuts about on the PlayStation side of things, whereas they have this really fast hard drive, whereas the Series X is just running a 1 terabyte NVMe SSD storage drive. I don't know if that's a Seagate also. We know their proprietary external is being produced by Seagate, but usually their internals are produced by, lesser known hard drive manufacturers. I don't even remember. I cracked my PS4 open a while ago, and I remember looking at the hard drive manufacturer and being like, oh, okay. And then, external PS5 does have an NVMe SSD slot, and they support USB hard drives, but we still have yet to hear exactly which NVMe SSDs are going to be supported on the PS5. We'll see. Price points are still pretty high on those drives. It's still pretty new tech for those really fast SSDs. External storage on the Series X, Seagate proprietary external 1 terabyte SSD expansion card. That's what we were talking about, the $200 1 terabyte expansion. Whereas, or 220? I think it's 220 or something like that.
20,
yeah.
Price point.
Yeah. And then USB 3.2 hard drive, external support. Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how the external stuff works out, comparing a standard NVMe to this custom internal SSD, installing games on that and seeing how different like load times are, and anything that's built into games to show that off, like the Ratchet and Clank bullshit that we saw with them going through different dimensions really fast in the showcase. like if you install that game on the external NVMe, are you going to get load screens there even for a second or two? Like, what is it that optimized? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And then forget about it. If you're playing games off of an external mechanical hard drive, not even an SSD, even like a 7200 RPM external, speeds are going to be significantly lower on that.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen there? We'll see. Backwards compatibility, PlayStation 4 games, PSVR, on the Xbox side, 360, Xbox One, and accessories. Yeah, the PlayStation 4 stuff, they were back and forth on. It sounded like not everything was going to be supported. Now it sounds like 90 some percent of things are going to be supported, like high 90%, something like that. Pretty much if it was a popular game, it'll probably be supported. It's been weird phrasing. They like said they were testing games. I thought they were like optimizing games for it. Like, pop the game in, see how it runs, tweak some things, but it sounds like they're just popping games and be like, does it work? Okay, it works. All right, next. And they're just making a list. But we'll see. I'm sure we'll get an official list, or maybe we'll have to wait until release when people decide to start popping games in and, making lists online themselves to say this works, that doesn't, etc. I'm going to skip over a good amount of these other features. Quick resume, we don't really know. I mean, it says the Xbox supports multiple games at once. We don't know if that's the case on PlayStation, probably.
I don't understand the point of having that.
Of what? Multiple games at once?
Yeah, being basically saying like being able to switch between the two really quickly, right?
Yeah, I mean, sort of. It's more of like a you don't have to save and quit one game to go play another.
So it's more
Right.
like a multiple applications open at the same time.
That's
Yeah. It's not like a super important feature, I don't think. There's not a lot of people out there that are like, oh, I'm playing this single player game, but I'm also playing COD multiplayer, and during matchmaking, I'm gonna pop back over to this single player game, play that. Like, really? Like, are you doing that?
ADHD.
But
Yeah,
you never know.
exactly.
It's kind of like if the hardware can support it and it's not hard to code in from a software perspective, why the fuck not? Yeah.
I feel like Microsoft is always looking to implement some of those quality of life things
Yeah.
in their UI.
USB ports, yeah, whatever. AV hookups, pretty standard, except for the differences between the S and the X, like we said. And then all this other shit. Doesn't matter. Okay, so so to summarize that, slight edge on the GPU side for the Xbox, slight edge on the hard drive side, I guess, SSD side for the PlayStation. Other than that, not a whole lot of note. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah,
Differences?
they're relatively neck and neck.
Yeah, I mean, even a lot of the hardware between them is shared. Like, it's basically the same.
Yeah, exactly.
It's again like GPU edge on one side and hard drive speed edge on the other side.
I'm curious to see down the line how that's going to really pan out.
It's one of those things that kind of comes down to how are developers going to implement it. How are they going to make use of it, whether they're first party or third party? Which, a lot of this stuff is usually only first party really feels like it makes use of it. Like touch controls on the PlayStation, like only like Naughty Dog and a few other first party developers really do much with it. Some people are like, use the controller speaker for this dumb thing, and for like from third party developers or whatever, but they're not really going out of their way to utilize platform specific features.
I wonder what incentive Sony gives to them to like push those features. You know what I mean? And implement them.
Probably not much. Probably not much incentive.
Yeah,
I mean,
like
the Vita
6-axis.
died, so yeah, dude. I haven't used 6-axis implementation for anything in quite some time.
Last time I used it was Last of Us for like the flashlight, shake the flashlight.
Oh
And that's,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
but it was like the smallest minute detail in that game.
Yep.
And it would always do it at a part where like some shit was going down. It was like clearly a scripted element. Like
Yeah.
I feel like in the first one, it was actually it would be random. Like it was
Yep.
and way more common too.
Yeah, I felt the same way going through that game. It really did feel like they just scripted in the battery going dead moments.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like again, that's like we're looking at the Ratchet and Clank demo. Like that's clearly them trying to use that platform specific hard drive speed stuff and show that off. But who else is really gonna, go out of their way to do something that works specifically towards that?
Right.
Yeah.
And to be
And
that Ratchet and Clank demo was specifically built to do that. Like that's not
Mhm.
going to be necessarily a reflection of the final game, but just more of a showcase of what
yeah.
that SSD is capable of.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Still super impressive.
Yeah.
And we haven't really seen what Microsoft can really do with their hardware.
Yeah.
We kind of touched this in the Discord.
Yeah, I remember we were talking about how they've showcased certain features effectively in certain cases and not so effectively in others. Yeah, a big part of that was like the Ratchet and Clank showcase just for that hard drive. Like, here, look, this is what our console can do. Look at this special thing. Whereas, like we said, Xbox has advantages on their hardware side. For all we know so far, they should be capable of displaying higher fidelity graphics. But we just like haven't seen it yet. I think what the conversation you were talking about was when I was saying like the nicest looking thing I've seen visually on next gen so far has been like the Demon Souls remake from Bluepoint. I think that's like the most beautiful looking next gen console game I've seen. And that's on PS5 for looking at the specs. Xbox for what they're running, they should have something just as good, if not better looking graphically. But we just kind of haven't seen it yet. Like they need to show us the edge that they have, demonstrate it more than numerically, demonstrate it practically.
Right. Demon Souls being one of the better or more impressive looking demos we've seen on the PlayStation, running on the PlayStation 5 so far. We haven't really seen anything running on the Xbox Series X yet. We saw a Halo demo that was running on a PC that like replicated Series
Yeah.
X specs.
Flashback to your rage.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all know the response to that demo. Even the one that followed that was like, this is the high fidelity version. It was like people are like, what?
Yeah.
I just remember on social media, basically Twitter, Facebook, that just exploding, and people were disappointed with the graphics.
Yeah.
Well, and again, like my point was, and this could be a multi-layered issue. This could be an engine issue. This could be the developers not putting out, a polished build or whatever. But my point is that, like, with the power that the Series X supposedly has, we should have been seeing way more going on in that demo.
Mhm.
That reflects kind of what Microsoft has said what their console's capable of. And what we kind of see in the hardware is that, like, it should be able to run, more assets, more AI, on screen, like more fidelity on screen, and be able to match the performance to that fidelity. And we really just saw like a janky demo. So
Yeah. It didn't
There
look
is
like,
a-
it didn't look any different from any Halo we've seen before. Just kind of added a grappling hook.
yeah, I mean, I don't even know if we want to get into the whole thing, but like it looked worse than a lot of Halo, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, for someone like me who's never played any Halo games, the only Halo I ever played was maybe one or two back in like 2006. Seeing that gameplay uh teaser, really, it it to me, from my perspective, it seemed like they were almost trying to cater to like new generations of gamers, like young kids who weren't even like alive when the first Halo came out. And because like like 14, 12-year-old kids, like how old I was when I first played Halo.
Yeah.
And because to me, I was like, wow, this looks pretty cool. It looks awesome. And then Greg, who's a veteran Halo player, is like, this is garbage. I'm
Well,
like,
dude, yeah, I don't know if we want to get into it, but like I've asked myself, like, if 12-year-old me would like what I saw there, and I really don't think I would. I just felt like that demo was like really messy. Didn't showcase like what the AI is capable of. I felt like it was just kind of like randomly displaced groups of enemies.
It was a shooting gallery, yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
there was no real rhyme or reason, for the placement and the amount of enemies and what we saw. Um, the new guns they showed were just different models of guns that we've had in Halo before. I felt like there wasn't really anything creative, I felt like, going on in that demo. And that has nothing to do with next gen. That's like all on the developer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, so let's get back on track with like the next gen conversation. But the point of the whole thing is that like they had a real opportunity to show what the Xbox Series X is capable of doing with Microsoft's biggest franchise, which is Halo,
Yeah.
and they really kind of, somebody tied their fucking shoelaces together and they just tripped like going out the door. Like,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's how we got on to talking about that in terms of relevance to next gen stuff. It was like the first party developers are generally the ones expected to showcase the unique qualities of the next gen consoles. So we expected, 343 to be the ones to be like, hey, look.
but
This is the
again,
benchmark.
343 has struggled as a studio, and like all respect to them, like I respect them and what they try to do, but like their execution has always kind of been rough. All of their games have been, except for Halo Wars, have been like mixed receptions. And I'm definitely nervous for this one. Like I felt like each iteration they kind of deviated further and further from where they needed to go. Like
Yeah.
personally, that's how I feel. And I kind of like, even though this is touted as a rebirth and like a spiritual reboot of Halo CE, like they're definitely missing the mark on a lot of things. Here's an example of a next gen feature that they could have implemented into that demo that could have been great. And I mentioned this in, I think, my hot take, but in the, I believe it was the the Halo Infinite reveal trailer, you get to see the wildlife and stuff. That it was like the teaser, the Slip Space Engine teaser trailer, tech
Hmm.
demo, whatever the hell they were calling it. But you saw the wildlife, and in this gameplay demo, we saw like little hedgehog squirrel things and birds. Very simple AI, very small models that don't take up a lot of screen and stuff like that. I
Yeah.
think really what could have been cool to showcase what that was capable of was like Master Chief comes over like a hillside and there's like a herd of alien deer or whatever,
Yeah.
like stampeding through a valley. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like running away from like a Covenant ship that's coming down.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Kind of like they did with the again, another big boon for Sony was that Unreal Engine tech demo that they ran a short time ago. They were doing like the intelligent particle effects and stuff using like insects or whatever. And
Right.
like,
Yeah.
same thing. Do that with like larger wildlife or whatever and just show us
Yeah.
how it can process these things. But
Exactly. I
nope.
think it could have showed exactly how you said it. To just show how the console processes some of those things, and the fact that we didn't see that was really concerning. And I think people are kind of missing the mark when they're, at least like the Halo YouTubers that I watch, they're like, oh, we did see some of the wildlife 343 talks about, but it's like we've had birds in Halo before. Like it's nothing impressive, like compared to what they've kind of teased us with, and we basically saw none of what that was. Like if you look at the Slip Space Engine trailer, and then what the engine, or rather what the gameplay demo was, I think 3 years apart, maybe two,
Hmm.
3 years apart.
Yeah.
Stark differences, and I think 343 really needs to like look back at that and push their game in that direction, because I think that would show the scale better than this weird floating Mega Blocks Minecraft world. Like, all right, enough about Halo.
Yeah. I
Okay,
mean,
well,
I'll just show
transition into this, yeah.
the last thing, I mean, really with it is just that it was delayed.
Right, so it's not going to be a launch title,
Nope.
which is a big deal.
That is a big deal, yeah. So, I mean, after all the feedback that they got, let's gently call it feedback. Yeah, they ended up deciding to delay it. Chris Lee, the studio head, said had to put the game on hold until 2021. The decision was made due to, quote, multiple factors, including, quote, the ongoing COVID-related impacts. He noted that it's not, quote, sustainable for the team to rush it out for, quote, this holiday. This is the full statement.
It's just so
Um,
weird that they were only able to make this determination after they dropped the gameplay demo that contained a release date.
Yeah. And and some of their responses to people's feedback was like, well, it's a not a fully up to date build of the game, and we're still quite a ways from launch, and anyone knowing anything about game development can tell you you're not quite a ways from launch. It
No,
was like
it's
3
edging towards
months.
gold
Yeah.
right now. Like,
Yeah. Like there's not a whole lot of changes you can make in the last 3 months without absolutely fucking breaking your game,
yeah, and
and
breaking your employees.
yeah,
Like,
well, yeah, which is, a very big point of contention in the industry right now.
they did bring Joseph Staten on, like a Halo veteran writer from the Bungie days.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
but that's also, there's definitely like a lot of red flags going on in the development cycle of that game. As you said, we should have been approaching gold, and now we're delaying the game,
And
bringing
pulling
on
in
new writers.
writers, like, yeah.
It's very concerning for the game, and I think we're gonna have like a Destiny kind of situation on our hands. I'm not saying it's gonna be bad, but
Yeah.
it's probably gonna be like, a learn to love kind of situation at first.
Yeah, and just a persistent work in progress. I don't know if it'll be under the guise of being like a games as a service kind of situation, but I think it'll definitely be prone to updates, patches,
Yes.
bringing in new content
Yeah.
at a rate that is not standard for the industry, but maybe is becoming more standard for the industry.
I would definitely prefer a more grand and robust entry, like to stand on, instead of just
Yeah,
break breadcrumbs over time. But
right.
see, but the point is, it's not going to be a launch title.
So yeah, I mean, not to dwell on Halo for too long, it's just, now it's no longer a launch title. A lot of us are uncertain about it and hoping that it ends up being great.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the next gen, like war, it's not,
It's a
you know.
huge loss for Microsoft. I think really all the cards are really in Sony's hands right now. Like they got they
except
got the upper hand.
except for the news we just got, which is friggin' huge. That we were all talking about. So
Huge purchase.
yeah, Microsoft to acquire Zenimax Media, and its game publisher Bethesda Softworks. So yeah, Zenimax is the parent company for Bethesda and a few other studios.
Elder Scrolls,
Yeah, I mean that's
Fallout.
the big one, the biggins. You know, Sony has been kind of dominating the exclusive games field, whatever you want to call it, for a while now, especially from like a critical level. But in one fell swoop, I think Microsoft might have, they might have moved towards balancing the scales a little bit more with this singular acquisition, because it was just one-stop shopping for them. Once you have Bethesda, you have the Elder Scrolls, you have Fallout, you got Dishonored from Arcane,
Doom and
Wolfenstein, Doom, which is now, that became a Bethesda first title several years ago. And then, I mean, there's some of the other stuff. I mean, Arcane had that one game that's apparently going to be honored, Deathloop. It was supposed to be a PS5 exclusive, but I think it's going to be a timed exclusive. I'd have to double check it, but yeah.
What's your
this breaks out for the titles that have already been announced, like the newest Elder Scrolls, and because it's not been announced, but it's been teased.
Yeah, and Tango Gameworks too. They had
I was about to mention
Tokyo. What is it? Tokyo Ghostwire. Yeah. Ghostwire Tokyo. And then if we get any like follow-ups to The Evil Within, are those going to be Xbox exclusives? Most of it probably will be on PC too, but regardless, is Sony not going to get these titles? Which, I mean, if you look at preferential treatment, it's definitely been given to Microsoft from Bethesda over the years, but this might just fully swing it over to just like exclusivity. And that would be massive,
Selfish is what it is.
You salty.
If they make a Fallout 5 and it's only for Xbox, there will be riots in the street.
Probably, yeah, but I mean, that's
what we can do
it's
about
going
it.
to be really interesting to see how that pans out, because I mean, there could very well be riots in the street, but will it be just a timed exclusive?
Yeah.
And I know some people are reporting it's going to be a case-by-case basis or whatever. So,
yeah, I mean, these deals have, big ass packets associated with them of legal
obligations.
Yeah, or restrictions, like legal, they have to abide by certain things. They're making a deal. Like,
yeah,
Bethesda doesn't want to lose out on money, so if they can, because they publish their own games too, if they can sell their game on PlayStation and make a bunch more money, if they can basically almost double their money, they're gonna want to do that. But then it's then the ball goes into Microsoft's court. It's like, all right, well, we'll compensate you for.
Do you have that number, the actual number of the acquisition?
Oh no, the billions.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's in this article. 7.5 billion in cash.
Oh,
God. 7.5 billion.
Cash.
Yeah.
You know what that looks like?
Well, that doesn't mean physical cash. It just means that there's no stock involved or anything like that. Like it's just money.
No, and then they drove to.
Yes, they filled a truck, and they just used a trebuchet to launch $7.5 billion in singles.
A comically large pile of cash.
Yeah, Scrooge McDuckian levels of fucking cash. What the fuck were we talking about? Oh, yeah. So, no, I mean, Bethesda still wants to make money, but then it goes to Microsoft to be like, in this deal, we will compensate you for any potential losses if this game is made exclusive, because then Microsoft expects if you have to buy an Xbox to play this game, that's going to turn into more sales of consoles.
Right.
If people buy more consoles, they're not going to buy just the one Bethesda game, they're going to buy other Xbox games too, and then they're going to make money there. Like it's a whole thing, and that all those.
They want to sell units. Will it get someone to buy an Xbox? Yes, it will. They'll make it exclusive.
Yeah,
They'll do whatever in their power to make that happen.
but again, that also goes back to the fact that the consoles have really slim margins. So at the end of the day, selling a console isn't totally about selling a console. Selling a console is about getting someone on board to then buy games for that console.
Is $200.
I mean, that can kind of increase their margins, but yeah. Point is, there's a lot of factors that lead to potential exclusivity in these games, and are these games going to end up being exclusive? I mean, my bet is, yeah, at the very least timed exclusives, kind of like we had with the Tomb Raider games, like a year, maybe more.
Destiny being one too.
Yeah, I think there's a really high chance of that. And again, the value in this to them is crazy. I feel like there's like two games from like the PS3 generation, two main games from the PS3 generation that people are still talking about, still playing, and maybe talking about and playing forever, or at least until the next iteration comes out. And that's Grand Theft Auto 5 and The Elder Scrolls 5, Skyrim. Like, people are still playing those games religiously to this day from the PS3 generation. I mean, Bethesda has had its ups and downs lately. I think some people have maybe lost a little bit of faith in them after like 76, Fallout Shelter, jumping into the mobile market. But then they also have something like Doom Eternal come out, which is like a phenomenal friggin' first-person shooter. It would be really hard to mess up the Elder Scrolls as long as they keep making those games the way they've been making them.
Well, that's what I want to get towards, is like they had the reveal of the next Elder Scrolls game already.
Yeah, just a teaser.
Exclusive. It seems that will be the case. But the other side of the coin is that like this was a new acquisition. You know what I mean? It's not like we have some launch titles ready to go, exclusively.
Yeah.
Whereas, I think Sony still has the stronger catalog right now. Like, yes, this is a huge acquisition, and down the line, this is going to be a big game changer for how people play some of their favorite fucking games. Sony still has out the door the better go, just with all their exclusives.
Yeah.
Everything that they've discussed and announced in their showcases. It's gonna be hard for Microsoft, even with this, to it's gonna be like a slow climb. It's not gonna be an immediate, like, nobody's gonna hold their breath and not buy a next gen console until the next Elder Scrolls is ready to come out.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is an incentive for sure. It makes it, in a vacuum, it makes the Xbox Series X and Series S a lot more appealing than they were before, for sure. And that's, of course, the thinking behind revealing this info now, because it is like like you say, a very new acquisition. Just to get out ahead of rumors and stuff might be part of it, but it's also, again, like, it can only help sales of their next gen consoles that are about to drop. If they're going to announce it, it would have made sense, and they did, to announce it now rather than to try and wait.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely think it was smart for them to announce it, and I think it will, like, anybody who's kind of still on the fence and has a fondness for some of those games will definitely lean more towards grabbing an Xbox. But I think at this point, like, I think most people have already kind of made their decisions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not that it's a real big focus of this Gcast, but I mean, the whole pre-ordering situations might mean that people, as much as they want one early, might not get one early. So, in the meantime, between that first wave of pre-orders and whenever it becomes widely available, which hopefully will be before the holidays, but who knows, we might get more news before then. We might get an Elder Scrolls 6 trailer that fucking says Xbox and PC exclusive. Yeah. And there will be riots then, too.
Yeah.
For sure.
There will be riots, but that will definitely give them an advantage. the more incentive
Huge.
for people to buy that. On that note, guys,
You gotta go.
I gotta go to work. So
Okay.
it was great hanging with you guys, talking about the consoles and everything, but only time will tell.
Well,
All right, guys.
Thanks for coming through,
All right,
Kyle.
thanks, Colin.
See you
Later,
soon.
Kyle.
Fucking hate that guy.
You fucking beat me.
I don't know if that's going to go into the video, but if it does, that is a little inside joke
Yeah.
we have going here.
What's left?
I mean, I had the shit that Phil Spencer said about exclusive games, but that's just like a
Right.
jab. That's just
Well, he
it's
said
just
that,
funny.
you know, and then this deal.
Yeah. You know, it was like they didn't really have any major exclusives, and he was like, you know, we kind of don't like the idea of exclusive games. He was like, it's completely counter to what gaming is about. Okay, so he said gaming is about entertainment and community and diversion and learning new stories and new perspectives. That's a great quote, by the way, too. He said, I find it completely counter to what gaming is about to say that part of that is to lock people away from being able to experience those games, or to force someone to buy my specific device on the day that I want them to go buy it in order to partake in what gaming is about. Gaming is bigger than any one device. I fully believe that he does believe that. I mean that I haven't I don't know if this interview is recorded like on video or audio, but
Right.
I'd love to hear his inflections, but just based on the words themselves, it sounds really genuine. I think he does believe that, but at the same time, I mean, like we know these deals, like this one that we just had with Zenimax and Microsoft come down from the top. He was definitely read in on it. He was probably at the meetings, but like he wasn't the guy, you
Right.
know. He's the head of Xbox and not the head of Microsoft, and the entity buying ZeniMax wasn't Xbox, it was Microsoft. But it is funny that it was like, you know, he had this quote. When was this? 2 months ago, July 16th. A couple months later, then we get like, you know, hey, let's buy Bethesda, like, you know. And it's very likely that there's going to be, at the very least, some exclusives coming, you know, out of this deal. But I think it's really likely that, you know, some of the big titles are definitely going to turn into exclusives.
Yeah.
Fallout, Skyrim, Dishonored, all of Shinji Mikami's crap that he makes. It's good crap. I'm saying crap affectionately.
I
Yeah.
feel like that's such a mistake, though. I feel
What
like
is?
they would lose out on so much money
Who? Bethesda / Zenimax?
Well, Zenimax
Yeah.
I
for
feel
making like
Zenimax-
Fallout an exclusive.
I think you're just mad.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but no, but
Well, yeah.
honestly, no. I feel like they would like that's. I feel like that's stupid. I feel like they would miss out on a lot of money.
I mean, they just made
Otherwise-
$7.5 billion, so
Yeah,
It's-
what's wrong with more money?
well, they're still gonna make money.
But
Again,
not
it's
the most money that they could possibly make.
you don't. I mean, you never know. You know, it could turn into Microsoft basically just paying them to kind of get shit in the pipeline for Microsoft. You know, like
Yeah,
they might take a loss on this deal for all we know in the immediate time. I mean, it is every deal like this is a loss in the immediate.
Wasn't Oblivion a exclusive to Xbox for a while?
For a while, yeah, I think quite a
It's-
while.
With Skyrim, I believe.
I don't think Skyrim was, but I think Oblivion was. So yeah, Skyrim was November 11th for everything. Whereas what were the dates that you're looking at on Oblivion? It was a year
It was-
apart.
Yeah, March 2006 for Xbox and Windows, and then March 2007 for PS3.
Yeah.
So it came out a whole like exactly a year later.
Yeah, I mean, there's been other things too that they've kind of catered to them with, like mod support came first on Xbox for consoles. Mod support on consoles came first to Xbox. That's how that sentence should have gone. Yeah, no, they've shown them some preference in the past before too, which those were probably smaller deals made, you know, behind the scenes for timed exclusivity or etc. This of course is just a much bigger version of that.
Yeah. So I definitely think, probably more timed exclusives than straight up,
I
but
mean,
still, it's going to make an impact once, and again, I said this in our Discord. I think Microsoft is going to have a harder time out the gate, but I think, like they're going for a way more consumerist approach. So I think, like, initially, whereas the PlayStation is going to be a lot harder to find, I think, Microsoft's are going to be a little more accessible.
you mean actually getting your hands on a console will be a little easier in that sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so, like physically in
Yeah.
store or otherwise, I guess. And I think over time, as the series expands, as their games lineup expands, people are gonna want the console more and more. I think people are gonna lean towards Microsoft more and more as time goes on. But I think off that, Sony has it. And this kind of relates to the proprietary storage unit for the Xbox that we were talking about, and that it's priced at 220 right now. But I mentioned it earlier that I think it will see a price drop as the demand for them rises as more people get their hands on the console.
Yeah.
And what is that going to mean as Microsoft's series concept expands and we get more units? Like I think that the hard drive will come into play more. I think that will allow for easier up and down scaling through the consoles. And I think, yeah, once all those pieces start working together, I think then we'll really see Microsoft coming in stronger. But again, I say Microsoft is focusing on like a consumerist approach, whereas I think PlayStation is definitely focusing on the games and getting the games out to people that want to get them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like these are big acquisitions. These are big things that Microsoft is messing with and playing with. Big powers at work.
Hmm.
But again, there's nothing really tangible there yet. Whereas Sony's just like, here we go. We got this powerful console. We got this lineup of games that we know you want to play. And I think that's really going to work for them off the bat for sure. But like, I think for me, if I go to Walmart and I don't, and I see an Xbox Series X, but I don't see a PlayStation 5, I might just buy that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. And that's coming from, people that are kind of a little bit more into gaming. From a casual consumer perspective, that's probably even more true,
yeah,
Got to get
exactly.
my kid a next gen console for this Christmas. Going to the store, what's there,
Yeah. I think that's kind of what they're going for.
Yeah.
And I wish they had a stronger emphasis on the games. Like, and this kind of circles back to Halo and how that was like its flagship franchise and kind of gave Xbox its own identity as this competitive gaming scene with
Hmm.
Halo as at the forefront of it. And I think kind of leaning into that, they kind of like lost sight of that. Microsoft has like lost sight of that over time. After
Yeah.
Xbox 360, I think they really were focusing on broadening the utility of their devices as opposed to what their
Yeah.
games are and marketing the console on the games.
Yeah. Well, that was part of the whole next gen cycle of drama and conversation or whatever when it came to Xbox One and stuff. Was they were trying to make like a multimedia machine as opposed to what felt more like a gaming console.
Right.
And people didn't, exactly take too kindly to that. That was partly why they got flamed a little bit at the beginning of last gen. It was really that and the friggin' Connect. But then they backpedaled and then they were like, no, we're all about the game. We're still all about the games. This is just another thing. And they went kind of hard the other way. And they were like, their next showcase, they were like, we've got like 50 games to show today. And that's all we're going to do is show games. So they went from multimedia to all about the games, and now I think this gen we're seeing kind of a hybridization and them finding that new identity that you're kind of talking about like consumer friendly but also multifunctional, but also trying to still have great games on the console, because it is I think they're aware it is first and foremost a gaming console. And yeah, I mean that's where this whole acquisition game is kind of coming in and giving them more of a fighting chance.
But again, we're keyed into it. I think the general consumers are not as keyed into it, So
Yeah.
I think the marketing just needs to really improve. And I think Microsoft leans on Game Pass a little too much.
I mean, it is another big advantage that they have,
It's an
but
awesome service. We were talking about Doom that's coming to Game Pass in a couple days.
Yeah.
And I can't wait. And I was like, I'm not gonna get it because it's gonna come to Game Pass eventually, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
play it there. And so it's cool to see that come to fruition and have that access to it. But we need powerful launch titles to be hyped for.
Yeah.
Um, and I think like Sony's got a lot of hype in their launch titles, or not even necessarily their launch titles, but in
Yeah.
their
Just
the titles that
what's
they've announced. You know what I
yeah
mean?
been announced and been shown,
Yeah.
and had a
So
response.
yeah, I think Microsoft really needs to pick it up a little bit. But I think I understand their plan. I think in the long run, there's going to be more Xboxes in homes than PlayStations, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, it's a very interesting uh generation, I think, that we're coming into, for
Yeah,
more than one reason,
well,
for
because it's going
many
to be
reasons.
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we've got two major console manufacturers taking totally different approaches, both, in theory, totally viable. And we're also like really kind of fully moving into that like game consoles as being mini PCs kind of things. It
Yeah,
really started with PS4 and Xbox One, but now it's like really feels like we're getting there.
yeah,
And like you said, the whole series concept with Xbox, I don't know if that means we saw for the first time really last gen, we saw like mid-generational leaps, not just like here's a slim version, but like here's one that has a little bit more processing power. Are we going to see that more often? Is it going to be like friggin' iPhones where we're going to get a new
yeah.
one every couple of
So I want
years? Like,
to touch on this. First off, I'm curious to see how many people end up with the Series S over the Series X, or vice versa. Like, I'm
mhm.
curious to see those numbers. Um,
Yeah, just a side note on that, I was curious to see that too with on the PlayStation side, and it surprised me. I thought the digital edition was going to way outsell the physical, and apparently it sounds like from initial numbers, the physical edition, the $100 more edition, is outselling.
Really interesting.
Yeah. Part of that I think is tied in with supply, though. I think they're being supplied less digital editions, but I'm pretty sure it also is sales numbers tied in there too. But yeah, I don't know. Either way, it surprised me. I would have thought they would have pushed the digital edition and more of those would have sold, but
Yeah. And in
doesn't seem
terms
to
of
be the case.
iteration, I think with the series concept, I actually think that we're going to see, typically we see the consoles kind of trimmed down in their iterations.
Hmm.
Um, and I think Microsoft is actually going to put out a beefier machine.
Well, that's like I said, what we saw for the first time last gen, and yeah, it's probably going to happen again,
Yeah. I don't
potentially
know what
more
they're going to
frequently.
call it, but I think they're going to put out a machine that just kind of squeaks just past the PlayStation 5 stock, like in terms of all those categories where it
Hmm.
falls short. And I don't know what we'll call that, like the Series M or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
And then there will be a PS5 Pro.
when the
Yeah.
but I think what my point is, I think we'll get another entry into the Microsoft Series before we get the PS 5.5 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then it's like, is it going to turn into a race too of just,
Yeah.
like basically a friggin' arms race with
Because
consoles?
basically, I feel like Microsoft is kind of setting themselves up to kind of just like lean back, and be like I said, they're gonna put out this
Play the
like
long game, kind of.
slightly beefier console than the stock PS5,
With
just like probably a year or two before that iterative next iteration drop.
with the exception of the hard drive, though, I mean, they already have a slightly beefier console than the PS5.
Yeah,
Physically?
No, not physically. Apparently, the PS5 is huge, which
Yeah.
kind of bugs me. But no, they're both pretty beefy.
well, the
Yeah, they
data
are.
transfer and all that, those specs. I think they're just gonna
Yeah,
optimize the machine even more, and then drop that, and then PS5, PlayStation will probably come out with something that's competitive towards that. But then Microsoft's already working on their next drop in the series.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
And I
so,
feel like it's gonna go back and forth like that forever.
but I think you're gonna have. I think PlayStation is just kind of trying to keep up with the latest entry into Microsoft Series. Microsoft is going to be like, here's this, even more powerful machine, and then they're going to drop this like even smaller machine, like you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like
Yeah.
they're gonna be ping ponging all over the place.
Well, yeah, the delicate balance with that is going to be having enough options, but not confusing the shit out of
Right.
people. You know,
Right.
I mean, people are already. You saw the headlines about people accidentally buying
Yeah.
Xbox
Oh,
One
yeah.
X's.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are easily confused. So
I
it
feel
would
like that
be-
was like a bunch of moms like
Oh, for
pre-ordering,
sure,
trying to
yeah.
do their kid, their 10-year-old
Yeah.
son a favor, and like, yeah, I'll pre-order the Xbox for Christmas. Got
Yep.
an Xbox One.
Dude, I mean, Nintendo were the kings of that for the past couple gens with a few different things, like the Wii U.
The Wii U,
People
yeah.
are like, oh, it's like a totally different console. I didn't even realize. I thought it was just a Wii. And like,
When that came out, I thought it was just an update for the Wii.
yeah, a lot of
I
people thought
had
that.
no idea.
Type in Wii U into Amazon and it would pull up like not a Wii U.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure the same thing is happening with Xbox. And then
Oh, yeah.
that happened first, and then even worse, they were with the 3DS. They were like, "This is the new 3DS." Like that
Oh,
was the
yeah.
name of it. Like
Oh my
there was a
God.
few games you could only play on the new 3DS, like Xenoblade Chronicles. That was it. You could only play that on the new 3DS when that came out. So yeah, they're gonna have to be careful with like naming shit, coming out with too many things, making sure it's.
Yeah, I don't think that they're gonna come. I think we'll probably see like 4 entries in the next 5 to 7 years.
It's gonna
As
be.
Colin
It's.
said, only time will tell.
He was not the first one to say that.
As
Like, that's a that's a
late,
Colin
great
quote. That's an
Colin
original
said.
Colin quote. Yeah, like I mean, what got us started on this little thing right now? It's going to be a very very interesting generation. So many things changing. Interesting new little factors at play. Can't wait to see what happens.
Got that right, baby.
Don't call me baby.
I was saying it to the world.
All right. Anybody else have anything to add before we
Oh,
close out this next gen conversation?
really-
I'm
are we
hungry
missing-
and I want my dinner. Yep. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to smash the shit out of the like button, subscribe, and get the fucking bell on.
You heard the man.
Yeah, what he said.
All right. Till the next one. Thanks for watching, guys. See you around.
Peace.
すっごーい